We'll go ahead and get started today. Thanks everyone for joining so far, and thanks again for taking out the time to join our webcast. I'm Marley Long from Intlock. I've also got Drew Madlung joining me from Concurrency, who is a trusted partner of ours. So thanks so much for joining me, Drew.
Thanks, guys.
And so today we're going to be talking about a successful path to a solution-driven SharePoint migration. So just a bit of housekeeping. So this webinar is being recorded. If you want to share this with a colleague in the next few days, we'll go ahead and send an email to everyone who signed up with the recording as well. So you can also connect with us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle, it's always a hard combination to say, is @Cardiolog. And you can also connect with Concurrency at Concurrency Inc. And of course, if you have any questions, we'll leave some time towards the end for any of your questions, and you can submit them in the chat box within the GoToWebinar panel. We will also, again, as I mentioned, have the recording available. It will be sent to everyone who has registered automatically through GoToWebinar, and it will be available online as well. So just a little bit about information about ourselves. Drew, you want to say something about yourself?
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining. And my name is Drew Madlung. I'm an architect with Concurrency. I am also a Microsoft MVP in the Office space, so I do everything in the Office 365 and SharePoint world, doing a lot of migrations, which we'll be talking about today.
Great. And I'm Marley Long, so I am the marketing manager here at Intlock, the developer of Cardiolog Analytics. So most of my time is focused on talking about analytics for SharePoint and Office 365. So you can find me in the community. I like to blog about anything relating to SharePoint as well as analytics, and on various webinars of ours as well. So just a little bit about Intlock. So we've been around now for about 11 years, since 2005, based out of Boston. And over the last 11 years, we've been focused on web analytics designed for SharePoint and Office 365. Our flagship solution is Cardiolog Analytics. It's built specifically for internal platforms, including all versions of SharePoint from 2007 to 2016, as well as SharePoint Online and Office 365. We can also track third-party tools like Yammer, Citrion, CRM tools, and more. And our solution is available as both an on-prem and a SaaS-based version on Power BI. Okay.
Drew? And a little bit of Concurrency. Yep. So we've been around for getting close to 20 years now. We are located mainly in the Midwest part of the United States. We are a gold partner, but we do cross kind of the realm of Microsoft. So whether we kind of start with SharePoint and some of the cloud pieces that we deal with, but we have a lot of work around CRM. We have a lot of work with service management and BI. So we kind of cross the boundaries of Microsoft and everything there in between. So we do a little bit of everything there, which is kind of nice.
Great. So just a little bit about what we will cover today. So Drew will start off talking about the migration process, talking about strategy, talking about picking the right location, various migration strategies that have been implemented from his own experience, migration mistakes, and then I'll jump into the best metrics that you can use to monitor your migration. So that will be before, during, and post-migration. And then at the end, we'll take some questions and answers to better understand what kind of questions you have about SharePoint migration, and try to get to those questions that you may have. All right.
So let's get rolling.
Yeah.
I'll toss it over to me, Marley, and I will
Sure.
kick the thing off.
There you go.
And as this is going, definitely make sure you put your questions into the chat. We will try to get to them as we kind of go through. Marley and I will be kind of splitting duties in here, so one of us is available to answer them, we will do our best. If not, we will get to them at the end here. So what I'm going to kind of start out talking about is just SharePoint in general. So this may be a slide that you guys have seen before. It's a slide I really kind of start out these things with because if you go back a few years or even a few months, there has always been some questions around where SharePoint is going and if it is the right platform for us. Me personally, working in the SharePoint space for many years, I did have a point where I did not know where SharePoint really was going to go. I definitely say in the last year, though, that this has changed. If you are working with SharePoint or if you ever had any concerns with where it's going, you should not, because it is a gigantic beast that is not stopping now. And the momentum that we've seen in the last year is almost basically unprecedented from the many, many years that I've been working with SharePoint. So if you have any if you have any thoughts about that or questions, I mean, definitely it's moving, it's big, and it's going to be continuing to grow. So it is the platform that Microsoft is using for collaboration, and it's becoming the center of that collaboration platform, especially in the Office 365 space that I'll be talking a little bit about here. And when looking at the Office 365 space, the big thing that kind of starts out is that this is a shift. It is a shift from the way that people are really working today and had worked in the past, especially in SharePoint. We had a very, I would say, slower update schedule kind of with the older versions of SharePoint, and there were reasons to kind of stay on premises, and the cloud was different. But now the things that are occurring in the cloud, it's innovation. I've heard many people, one thing I've heard very recently, that IT is no longer information technology, but it should be shifting towards innovation technology. And this innovation is occurring up in the cloud, and the cloud services, especially provided by Microsoft, are going to give you and your company, they can give you a competitive edge in what you're doing going forward. So I would not say that the question, is the cloud right for you? It's going to be what parts of the cloud are right for you, and when are they right for you? Because you're going to definitely need to make sure you kind of look at that and review what is the proper path. So when you're thinking about a migration, kind of the story that we're going to be telling today is going to be around on-premises. So I've done quite a few migrations, more than I want to count, and a lot of them kind of start with on-premises today. And when you're figuring out where you need to go, this is the first thing you kind of need to look at, is are you going to be looking to do an on-premises migration only? Are you going to be looking to do a cloud migration, maybe 100% cloud? Or are you going to be looking at something in the middle, which would be your hybrid solutions? Microsoft has done some great work that I'll be talking about here on how hybrid can really benefit you if that is the right solution for you. But really what you have to do is compare your different options that are out there. So there is a ton of things that can kind of guide you down what path you need to take. As an example, are you looking to save just facility space? Do you have the licensing for Office 365 already? That's actually a very common thing that I've been seeing. Do you have the licensing available and you're just not utilizing it? Or do you have hardware that you've already purchased that you're looking to actually keep on premises because you've had it? A big one here is the support. A shift to a cloud-based architecture, especially in SharePoint Online, it is a culture shift, not just a technical shift. That it is an evergreen platform that updates will be rolling out to you in a very, very fast manner. And is your culture ready for that? Is your business ready for that? There's pros and cons to each of the on-premises, cloud, and hybrid solutions, and you want to make sure before you start a migration, you want to make sure you pick the right one. So almost go through a pros and cons list of the things that are available out there for each of the different platforms and figure out which ones fit you and which ones don't. Some of these can actually be almost full stops. A good example of this is customizations. So full trust code solutions are not available up in Office 365. So if you have a lot of full trust code, because as we all know, SharePoint is a Swiss Army knife and you can do almost anything with it, whether you should or shouldn't, that if you wanted to move that up into Office 365, that might not be a very easy switch. That you might take a lot of work. It might take a lot of lifting, a lot of cleaning, a lot of maybe rebuilding everything from scratch using the cloud-based solutions if you want to go full cloud. In that case, maybe you want to look at doing an on-premises migration to just 2016. Or maybe you want to start looking at a hybrid approach. But you have to kind of look at all of these different scenarios to see which one fits you, because there is definitely not one size fits all. The other big one out there is going to be around security and compliance. Microsoft has spent last year, they announced Ignite, they spent $1 billion on security. There is no way that anyone here listening has probably spent that much money on security from their company. So if you're looking for security, you might actually be more secure in the cloud. But there might be data sovereignty issues that you need to kind of look at if you're in a global space. So it's definitely not, again, a one-size-fits-all. You want to walk through the pros and cons of each of these scenarios to figure out which one fits your business. Now, one of the more common ones that I'm starting to see is hybrid. And I do think that this is going to be kind of one of the futures, or probably the future, largest implementation of things that are occurring, especially when you get into the very large businesses, because there are a lot of workloads that really might not work up in Office 365 yet, or you might say, since the innovations are occurring in Office 365, you want those now, but you don't need everything yet. So if you go back to very recently, I'd say the shift has definitely been, instead of forcing you kind of up into Office 365, it's how are we going to bring the cloud solutions back to you? Basically, how can we give you these different cloud solutions when you want them and as you need them, not all at once. So more bringing the cloud to you than bringing you up into the cloud. And I think that's a very different approach. And I think it's very powerful as you kind of look at your different migration options. So when you're looking at a hybrid option, the three main tools that you kind of have out there today are going to be really built around unifying your experience for your end user. If you're, a good example is when you're doing a migration up into Office 365, a lot of times, and I'll talk about this more going forward, and so will Marley, that maybe a cutover is not the best idea. You kind of have this slower iterative approach, or kind of a less straightforward approach where your users might be interacting with both environments. Well, there's things called hybrid team sites which basically allow your users to have a more seamless look and feel from migrating, while you're migrating from content that users can be on-premises, viewing content in Office 365, and vice versa. So you kind of see both. You can get the best of both worlds. And the same can be said about hybrid OneDrive, that if you're doing a migration, you definitely want to think about a migration from SharePoint, or I would say collaborative content, is a different migration than if you're using your personal content, which is really where OneDrive strives. So you can have just a straight migration from maybe we want to utilize OneDrive for Business up in Office 365, but keep our collaborative space in SharePoint on premises. And you can still have to handle the migration of how you get your content up into Office 365. So hybrid OneDrive is there to kind of support that, so your users kind of don't see really the difference between the two. And then once you start the hybrid option, you're going to be looking at hybrid search, that you want to bring together, whether you search on premises or in Office 365, that you can search between everything. And this will really give your end users a great experience as you're kind of going through the migration and maybe post-migration if you live in a hybrid environment full time. If you are on SharePoint 2016, I have a little bullet in there talking about auditing and taxonomy, that those are coming. They're in preview now with Feature Pack 1. But the story here is that hybrid is big and hybrid is growing. So depending on your migration path, it's definitely something you want to consider to look as an option for you. So let's say you pick where you want to go. So we're starting with the story that we're on premises. Let's say we're on SharePoint 2010. How do we get started? We want to go probably up into Office 365 because that's a very common scenario that we've been seeing. So from where do you start as a team? Well, the first thing is plan. And I've done these talks before and I've worked with clients, and the biggest thing is if you put together the proper plan, you're going to be more successful than if you just start doing something without that plan. Now, there's certain aspects of a plan that can be really powerful to make sure your migration succeeds. And one of the big ones is making sure that business is involved and keeping them excited. In my opinion, a migration is not really it is a technical process, but it is mainly a business process too. Especially when you're talking about SharePoint. This is not really an exchange migration where the things are kind of happening behind the scenes. That if we're doing a migration, and let's say from 2010 to Office 365, there's going to be a lot of changes involved in your business. And you need to make sure your business is aware, get them excited about what's available out there. There's some great tools in the Office 365 tool set out there from Fast Track that can help you with adoption. And we'll be talking a lot more about how you can kind of get ready for those adoption using different analysis tools. But getting that business involved in what's going on is going to lead to a better migration. And with the migration, don't just migrate to migrate. We're talking about where to migrate to, but where you migrate to, base those on specific goals, right? Let's say you want to start using Microsoft Teams. Maybe that's your goal because you want to try to enhance productivity. Put that down as a goal. Begin to try to figure out the ROI that you're trying to hit by doing a migration like this. Let's say you're trying to migrate to mitigate risk. That's a great example. So make sure you document that and plan that accordingly So when you're done, you can prove that you've mitigated this risk or that you've enhanced your productivity because of X. And the proper analysis to start will give you that going forward, but you have to know what you're shooting for here. And when you're shooting for it, make sure you set a realistic timeline. I've been at plenty of migrations and seen them fail because whether we go too fast or too slow. Too fast, you're going to lead to probably errors in the process, maybe something was missed, and too long, the business is going to it can get stale. The content can change. And especially when you're looking at Office 365, at the rate of change that they have, you need to be able to account for that in your culture as you're moving up in Office 365. And when you're doing a migration, it's definitely not just you. Whoever's listening and on this, I hope you didn't do a migration by yourself because it can be very hard. And bringing the business in and having stakeholders in that can help decide and make decisions on these migration plans will benefit both you and the business for awareness and completeness when it's done. They can really help you generate those ROI plans. And when you get this plan, what does that do? Right? So let's say you have this great plan, we documented it all. What do we get? We spent all this time. Well, what you actually get is you're going to match the tool or the migration that you're moving to the actual business need that you're working with. So however you gather that, whether it's in interviews and workshops or using something like Cardiolog that you're going to see to help build some of this engagement, you're going to get the business need to match where you're going to. And a migration that's really important because you could build the greatest thing in the world, and if it does not match your business, no one's really going to use it. So work towards the business processes and the needs that you have, not necessarily based on the technology, right? That's a key point of why you want to get that plan going forward. And then when you think about a migration, it's very important to understand there's a difference between a migration and an upgrade. So we're all probably involved with SharePoint in some way, and we've probably all dealt with both. So there is a path for both. A migration is it's like moving into a new house. You're taking all your stuff, you're putting it into a moving truck, and you're bringing it over to a new house, and you're moving it all in there. Right? You're going to have a completely new home. You're going to have some new doors. You're going to have new piping. All of that it's going to be different, right? So you're taking stuff out and moving it in. An upgrade is going to take kind of your core background information and move it to the newest platform. So let's say you're on SharePoint 2010 and you want to go to 2016. There's an upgrade path, right? You're going to keep those same back-end information and try to upgrade them accordingly. So in the sense of a remodel, it's a remodel, or in the sense of a house, it's a remodel, right? You're going to take your current bathroom and make it better, make it different. So there definitely is a different approach for each, and there's pros and cons to each. Now, the most common thing I've been seeing today have been migrations, especially because when you think of an upgrade, you can't really upgrade into Office 365. No matter what, it's going to be a migration because you're lifting your content from your on-premise environment or a different cloud service or anything, and you're moving it up into Office 365. So when you're looking at the migration options, there's a few. Some are heavily used and some are barely used. The first one, if you think about a manual copy, I don't think many people would be doing a manual copy, but realistically that's just grabbing your content, using the out-of-the-box tools in SharePoint today, whether it's File Explorer or just drag and drop, that's definitely an option. Right? If you have OneDrive, that can be an option for your end users to copy. The most common thing is a third-party tool. There are a ton of them, and they are great. And I won't pick one up today, but definitely look at the different third-party tools that are out there and figure out which one kind of fits your business need the most, right? These come in as part of your migration plan, right? Whatever migration plan you build has to include the option of how you're going to get that content out or how you're going to move it. Microsoft does offer some other tools for you. So the Fast Track one is probably the most popular that if you are moving in Office 365, they might be able to help you out depending on who you are. So I definitely recommend if you're moving that shift, if you made the decision to go to the cloud and to go to SharePoint Online, to look at the Fast Track website and see if they can help you out. Also, if you're feeling bold, you can try to build your own migration solution. So there is a migration API available for you if you're going to 365 that you can build stuff against. But all of the third-party tools actually will utilize that migration API. So depending on your use case, I've seen it more from pulling from very custom-based solutions, trying to get them out into Office 365 that you might need to build your own solution to get it out, not necessarily from, let's say, SharePoint to SharePoint. Now, when you're thinking about the migration, so we've made the plan. We know the tool that we're going to use. What is important to know? What are some of the decisions that you need to make? One of the first ones is kind of how your migration is going to occur. So I think there's a big difference between a cutover and an iterative migration. So I'm doing one of both right now. A cutover migration is more, let's try to do it all in a very short period of time, maybe, and take some outages. So let's say we're moving up into Office 365. We're going to migrate everything over the weekends. You're going to come in the next morning. When you open up your browser, it will automatically redirect you instead of your old intranet web page. Maybe it'll take you to the new one up in Office 365. So a very hard cutover there. Not a lot of time for testing, not a lot of time for work in the middle, but there can be certain cases where you need to do a cutover. So the most common would be if you have custom solutions. Maybe you want to have those custom solutions they can't be active in 2 environments at once, so you need to kind of get them up there and move everything across at that same time. If you're doing on-premises to on-premises migration, that can be very popular if you want to keep the same URLs. So let's say you're at intranet today and you want to go to intranet tomorrow. The cutover really is one of the only ways you can do that to make sure your end users have a seamless experience. And as you're looking through those considerations, whether you pick cutover or iterative is definitely more of the waved approach, right? Let's say we're going to move X areas today, we're going to migrate this content next week. After that, we're going to migrate this next set of content. Really, that's understanding how your content is going to move across. And a lot of the tools that you can use, there's tools you can take to figure out which is right for you. But again, it's all about that plan. It's figuring out what is right for your business and hitting those goals to meet what you want to do. Now, the other option is, once you have a cutover as iterative, you can also figure out a lift and shift versus a lift and update. So my example of this is going to be a lift and shift is kind of taking your experiences that you have today. Let's say you have a great intranet and you just want to move it up into Office 365. The URLs will obviously change. You want to keep the same core content. Right? Your information architecture is good. You think you have all the content that you need. There's not really any changes that you want. You have good adoption. Well, that might be a good chance for lift and shift. The more popular thing that I've seen, especially when going to Office 365, is a lift and update, which is figuring out what are the changes we want to make, whether it's before, during, or after our migration, and then perform these updates accordingly. So if you wanted to do that, there's definitely a lot of tools you can kind of jump in to figure out what would be the lift and update versus the lift and shift.
Drew, I think this is kind of the specific area where analytics can really come in and help with this lift and update. So that's what we focus a lot on, and that's what I'll be covering just after Drew finishes his presentation, is exactly, how can you use these metrics, how can you use these analytics to take action and to do this lift and update and to find this content, that may need to be updated, that may need to be removed or archived, and so forth. So.
And that's great, and that's perfect because. And this is definitely the more common approach that I've seen, and especially to make it successful. That a lot of times you have a lot of junk. A lot of people keep a lot of things, and they think they need to keep a lot of things when you probably don't need to keep a lot of things. And that's using the analysis tools. You can come up with a good content inventory to figure out what you need to move. And that's a great consideration, is build what you want, right? There's great tools out there to figure out your inventory, but use those tools to track towards your migration plan. Figure out the content that you need to move, figure out the ownership for that content, and figure out when that content's going to move. So that kind of all dives back into your content inventory. So you really need to understand what's going to move before you move it. Because what I've seen happen before is people will just press go in a migration up in Office 365 and see, wow, we actually had like 2 terabytes of data in this one site collection, and it took a week to finish. And they were planning for a cutover. What are you supposed to do there? You're in a situation that you did not plan accordingly, and now your users are going to be in a situation where you're going to have to stop your migration or start again at a different point once you've done your planning. So understanding the content that you have can really set you up to figure out the speed that you can move during your migration. There's like this, unfortunately, there's not like a great answer for like how fast you can go or how should you go, or especially if you're going to the cloud, but definitely you don't want to make it too fast and you don't want to make it too slow. You got to find that nice middle spot that your business will be happy, and the IT team and the support team can handle that migration going forward, because support is an area that a lot of people forget about. Your end users, especially when you're going to the cloud, I keep saying that, but it's very different. There are different tools out there. The user experience can be different. And your support team and your service management team need to be able to be ready for that change. So that speed is vital, and all of these considerations kind of tie back into that moving forward. Now, if you are looking at an upgrade, this is probably going to be more likely if you're looking at a hybrid approach. So a good thing to note is that if you guys are on SharePoint 2007, it is end of life this year. So it has hit the time. If you are on 2007, it's time to figure out where you're going. And if you're looking to do an upgrade, it is quite the upgrade path to get up to SharePoint 2016. If you're on SharePoint 2010 and you wanted to keep your environment and upgrade to 2016, you do have to do what's called the database attach, in which you actually have a SharePoint 2013 farm and a 2016 farm, and you actually have to bring your databases into 2013, upgrade them, and then bring them into 2016 and upgrade them. So it is a two-step approach. So if you're on 2010 and you're looking to move to 2016 and maybe move to a hybrid, the migration, you might be doing a migration to SharePoint 2016 instead of doing an upgrade, unless you wanted to have that SharePoint 2013 farm in the middle. But definitely, again, it's very important to understand migration versus upgrade and how you're going to move. I will say, if you're looking at the hybrid options and you are on 2013, you do have hybrid options today already that they've been rolled out in different cumulative updates for you, so you can start taking advantage of certain hybrid options in 2013. If you're on 2010, you are going to have to move up into those newer versions to really take advantage of all of the hybrid options available to you today. And the hybrid stuff is just getting started. The things coming out in feature packs for SharePoint 2016 are awesome, and there are going to be more feature packs coming that will definitely enhance the user experience and the information and kind of how SharePoint 2016 looks and feels based on stuff from the cloud. Now, right before we get to some of the good stuff that Marley's going to show you, what are the things you avoid? So what have I seen in the past that from doing these migrations that I know really can cause bottlenecks? And the first big one, Marley talked about again, it's talking about your old content. It's figuring out what you guys have out there today. Right? If you're looking at speed and size and scale and all of your content and trying to clean up search, a lot of people say search doesn't work for them. Well, search could work for you if you work through your content. Figure out your content that you're working towards and find out, is there old content that you don't need? Is there content that is actually incredibly important to you too? Figuring out the analysis of that will really help you target your migration. I've been in experiences where we thought there was a site that we actually was kind of recently. We did a migration up into Office 365 from 2015, and we had an iterative schedule, so we kind of had this waved approach. But one of the sites that we didn't really was kind of missed, and we didn't really know there was a ton of people on it. We moved it. It briefly changed the UI because of 2013 Office 365, and all of a sudden the support team got nailed because the analysis was kind of missed for them to say that there was a ton of people hitting that site versus not. So making sure you involve the business there and figuring out the content that you have will make sure your migration leads to a more successful path. And with that business involvement, there's a lot of ways you can work with the business for that communication. So making sure they're aware of what's actually changing is really important. Now, there's a lot of ways you can do it, but it's very important to make sure they know what's happening, when it's happening, and why it's happening. That's a big thing, is why are we doing this migration? Let them know. Let them talk about the goals that you've established. And once you do that, with that communication, you're going to be setting yourself with timelines. So by not taking too long, you're going to be, with the communication, you'll know who is moving, when they're moving, and how they're moving. So once you have that, you can get that by doing your analysis. You can get that by understanding the things that you have today and figure out how you're going to get there tomorrow. And once they're there, don't stop. Continue your analysis. Keep going with that analysis to figure out who's all accessing your sites, when are they accessing your sites, why are they accessing your sites, who's doing the searches. All that stuff is available to you, but take advantage of it to help build your ROI for your migration. So when you're done, you can say, this is how my migration went, this is why it was successful, here are the analytics to prove why it was successful. And that's what really Marley's going to talk about here in a second. And in the migration, governance is a fun word to talk about, but we have to talk about it here because when you're doing a migration, content ownership is important. Whose content is this? Why is it here? Do we have requirements around this? And if you do, are you utilizing managed mandate? Are you utilizing content types? What is this? and understanding that whether you have a governance plan or you don't, making sure you know who's moving, when it's moving, and who owns the content. You can get some of that through your analysis, but understanding ownership is vital as you kind of move through that migration process, both before, during, and after. Now, SharePoint projects are challenging. They're always fun. They're always great, and they always have their quirks. And a good thing to note, a lot of the times in a SharePoint migration or a SharePoint project, it's not the fact that the technology didn't work. SharePoint will work. SharePoint can handle what it needs to be done. But some of the key things that reason why these migrations fail is one of the key ones is poor planning. So I talked a lot about planning here. Marla's going to be talking about how you can plan better. Marla's going to talk about how you could actually drive people towards training. How do you get leadership involved? These are questions that you need to work towards in your plan, but realistically, they're not SharePoint problems. They're business problems. So I've said the word business a lot and plan a lot, but that's really what's going to lead you to a successful migration. The business, a plan, keep it time-based, and figure out what kind of metrics you're going to work before, during, and after to provide to your leadership to say this is why you're doing it, right? Those give you the data points that you need to have a successful migration. I know Marla's going to show us some really cool stuff here, so I'm actually going to give this back to you, Marley, if you want, or if you can take it back over here. It is all you.
All right, just give me 1 second. Okay.
And definitely, as this is going, if anyone has any questions about the migrations or stuff that I've done, I'll be in the chat here, and Marley can show you all the awesomeness of Cardiolog here.
Thanks, Drew. That was a really excellent presentation. Really helped even myself to really understand the migration process and kind of the various options and challenges. So I'm going to dive in a little bit deeper, like we mentioned, into analytics and how analytics can actually help you drive a migration path forward as well. So this is one aspect of the many things that Drew talked about that you can do to really, create the strategy and really set your goals up and try to actually reach these goals with your SharePoint migration. So just a little bit about Cardiolog Analytics. So as I mentioned, we are an on-premise as well as a SaaS-based solution. And our goal is really to help our customers improve SharePoint based upon how it's actually being used. So there are 3 main pillars that we talk to our customers mostly about. So the first is monitor. So this is actually tracking the usage within SharePoint. Our second pillar is engaging with our users, so asking them what their needs are, what their pain points are, and what's not working for them. And then finally, the most important pillar is enhance, and we want to make sure that we're constantly improving SharePoint based on these pillars. And I'll show you a bit today about how you can actually do each step of this process, monitor, engage, and enhance. And the idea is to have actionable metrics, which will allow us to make SharePoint Office 365 better for the users. So why do we need analytics when we talk about SharePoint migration? So Drew touched on this a little bit. I'm going to go and dive in a little bit deeper. So the key here is really that you can only manage what you measure. And I know it sounds a bit cliche. I guess this may be an overused business term in some sense, but it's really true. We can really only know what's going on in SharePoint. We can only really define if the launch was successful, if the migration was successful, if people are using it, and that adoption is actually increasing, is really by being able to measure what's going on. And that's really the end goal that we help our customers with. And the idea is understanding how we can measure the deployment, analyze it, and by using analytics, by leveraging analytics, you can find out whether your portal is really performing as expected and whether it's actually really truly providing that value to your organization and that ROI that many senior management is looking for when they deploy that SharePoint portal. So I think, again, a common theme that we see now is many businesses, they kind of see SharePoint as this, magic bullet that's going to solve a broad range of internal communications and management issues, but they really don't have an understanding about how and to what degree and exactly at what cost. So too many buyers are simply crossing their fingers and kind of just jumping into SharePoint, but like Drew said, creating that strategy and really setting up this analytics methodology is what's really most important for reaching success. And I just want to mention that something, again, really important to remember with any migration process are these small steps. So there may be, this big picture of what you want to do, how you want to push this migration forward. But when we talk about analytics, analytics are really the small steps, and they compile to create this larger picture in which organizations can really base their business decisions off of. And I also want to mention this idea of setting KPIs. So organizations may also have difficulty determining, what exactly is a successful migration. So again, this can really depend upon the organization themselves. There's no across-the-board KPI that we can say, you can measure this, this, and this, and that's how you know you will have a successful migration. Each portal looks different. It's not a one-size-fits-all strategy, but that's why it's so important, like what Drew mentioned, to really create this strategy beforehand, before the migration, to understand what you would like to measure, and determining the success of the migration can really be based on these KPIs that you set out at the beginning of the process. So a few examples, maybe we would like to see 90% of end users have migrated to the new portal. Another example of a KPI can be that a specific number of page views per week will be viewed per department. And a third one can be if you have a social platform, for example, that 80% of end users will be active on social platforms like Yammer, Citrion, or SharePoint Social by a specific date rate, by a specific time. So these are all kind of just metrics that can be included in the success of an overall migration. However, breaking these metrics down makes analyzing successes and failures a little bit more actionable and measurable. So I'll dive into these metrics now, and just to kind of give some context, I'm going to focus on the 3 areas in which you can track the migration. So we're going to talk first about this before process, so whether you have content overload, you don't have a migration plan, maybe you have storage challenges or disorganized information. We're going to talk then about the during process of the migration. So are users still entering the old portal, various security permissions, things like that. And after, what do the adoption levels look like in the new portal? Is there a resistance to change? What groups are using the portal the most? What groups are using the portal the least? And how can we target them to understand what they need? So we'll go into a little bit more detail now. So I'm going to switch now into our interface very quickly. Okay, so now I'm just jumping into Cardiolog Analytics SaaS, just to give you a better idea of what I'm talking about and how you can actually create and analyze these reports. So here you can see Cardiolog Analytics SaaS. This is an all-encompassing SaaS solution versus we do have an on-prem solution which is available if you're interested. Our SaaS solution is provided through Power BI, which you can see here, and it's a really powerful data visualization interface, and it's hosted on Microsoft Azure servers. And SaaS Cardiolog Analytics SaaS comes with a set of pre-made reports and dashboards that we put together in a way that we think would be most beneficial to the users. And when we designed the reports, of course the main purpose was to provide the data, but we really wanted to take it one step further. So we built them in a way that already helps users know how they should measure their business and portal goals. So for our purposes today, we're going to focus mainly on this portal resources report that you can see here, as well as various adoption reports. And these are all reports that you can use to really boost your migration and help you get those insights that you need at the right times. And let's just jump back in to this context of our pre-migration stage. So there are a various set of reports that can be really useful in this pre-migration stage. So we're going to focus on this portal resources overview report here. This really gives you a big picture idea of what's going on in your portal in terms of your resources, and it can really assist you in supporting your migration. So here you can see at the top a few nice simplistic visuals that really tell you that, here you can see your number of tree items, 1,414. Your number of unused items is 78. And you can also filter over here on the right-hand side according to month or quarter specifically. So let's go ahead and maybe we can filter by, let's filter by February, the month of February. That's great. And below here you can see a few charts that let you kind of drill down a little bit. So for example, here you can see your portal size chart. So you can see everything here. Your interlock team site, for example, is the largest of your portal. And you can also see your size by content type over here on the right-hand side. So it's quite obvious here. You can see that your documents are what take up your largest part of your portal. So this is really important when you're going through that portal cleanup process, and you kind of want to just look at a report and have this kind of big picture idea and say, okay, what portions of my portal are taking up the most space? Well, right off the bat, I can see documents are taking up a huge amount of space in my portal, and then you can actually dive into those documents and see, okay, maybe I need to archive those documents, delete those documents, etc. And I'll show you how you can actually dive a bit deeper into those documents to actually do that cleanup process in just a moment. And you can also see your trends over time at the bottom as far as your content creation goes. So I'm going to move over now onto our unused content report. And one of the most important steps to take before any migration initiative, like we talked about many times, is to prepare and clean up your portal sites, lists, and documents. So archiving or deleting unused content from the portal will really ease that migration process, really allow your organization to migrate only the content that is needed. So you can use analytics to detect which pieces of content are not being used, and that can really make your cleanup and migration process easier. And like Drew said, this can be particularly helpful with a cutover process, for example, when you want to get things done quickly and you're really looking for results. So we can actually see this information for an entire tracking period or even a specific month, like I mentioned. So again, let's filter for February. And we can see here that the most of the size in the portal is, again, taken by documents. It can be visualized here in this pie chart. And again, that most of it is coming from this interlock team site. If you hover over here on this widget, you can see exactly the content type, the number of page views, exactly what month it is, and the last page view date as well. And you can actually see, for example, if you want to take action and clean up the portal, so we can actually focus on these documents that are not being viewed and are very large and taking up a lot of space. So if we actually click on it, here we can see all this information. And I think the really cool thing about this visual, I'm going to enlarge it a bit, is that this specific visualization really allows you to see how the data changed over time. Oh, wait 1 second. I'm going to have to unfilter it for a moment. Okay, and so when you click here, you can actually see how your portal, your content creation has changed over time in your portal. And this is a good indicator to really anticipate your portal size, for example. So when you're migrating to a newer version, you can actually understand, okay, what's the rate of content creation in order to anticipate what your space is going to look like in the new portal as well. So that's just really nice visualization for that. For the sake of time, I'm going to move on, and by clicking here, we can actually see your most popular content within SharePoint. So that's what I talked about before, is actually taking action, going in and doing that cleanup. So what kind of action, what kind of value can this metric provide? So here you can see this is all your most popular content with your highest number of page views. So once you know that that's your most popular content, you may want to link to that content on your homepage or in the new portal. So if this document list is very popular, for example, instead of having people wasting a lot of time clicking through the portal to try and find it, we can easily create these quick links, and we can save people time because we know these specific documents are most popular. So, okay, let's flip that around. Click here. Let's give it a second. Okay, now we can actually see our inactive content. So here we can see we have 0 page views. And whether it's sites, documents, pages, or more, all of that can be visualized here. And this is all of our unused or our orphan documents. So here, this is where we can really take action. So we can either get rid of them. So A, let's delete them if they're unused. B, let's update them. Or C, if they're updated already, and we know that this information is really vital to the company, so let's leverage this content so that people can access it if it's important to the organization. So let's place it on a team site, let's place it on a homepage. Depending on who's focused on this content, then we can decide where we would like to place it. So that's the action that we can really take based upon orphan content. And besides that, we can see again here the size of the content, the owner of the content, and we can take action based on this information as well. So here we can actually flip it around. We can check the size of the content. So let's see which content is the largest in size. And I'm going to grab my highlighter here. So here I can see all of this content. For example, we have this site pages about document here, or the site page here, I'm sorry. So it has 0 page views, but it's taking up a huge amount of space in the portal. So we can actually go in here, we can see, okay, Joe, we can contact Joe, we can say you have 60 days to either update this content, to place it on, place it somewhere where it's going to get more views, or please remove this content. And if not, I'm going, you can have your administrator say, I'm going to take action. And this can also really help you to speed up, as Drew talked about, the speed of the migration process. So you can actually go in and kind of attack one by one, and you can see also here, for example, your site pages members page also had 0 page views, but was taking up a huge amount of space in the portal. So that's a really nice way that you can really take action to start that cleanup process and to use analytics to really help you get through that process. Okay. So I'm going to erase all my beautiful pictures. So I'm going to jump now into our during migration process. All right. So I want to navigate to our collaboration tool for just one moment, just to show you how easy it is to target people during a migration process. So you can really understand if they're adapting to the new portal and if they're finding what they're looking for. So here, this is Cardiolog Engage. This is an updated version of our collaboration tool. So you can actually help users find what they're looking for, or even target them to ask them, what do you think about the new environment? So you can simply click, you can ask people if you found what you're looking for, you can target based upon various items, so newbies, for example, people who did not visit any page, inactive users, engaged users, groupies, or creating segments yourself. Let's go ahead and target everyone for our purposes. You can pick a channel, so you can contact them by phone, by text message. The options are really endless at this point, by desktop notification, by email. Let's go with an in-app message as a pop-up. I think this is one of the most effective ways to target people in SharePoint. And we'll move on to our text and design. So we can simply ask them, is there something missing that you'd like to see in the new portal? And you can, of course, change the color, the look and feel. And then you can actually select a trigger. So you can schedule, you can run the campaign right now, or you can do a web request. And then you can move on to your summary, where you can see the entirety of the campaign, and you can launch your campaign to really target your users within SharePoint. So that was just a little bit about how you can take action to target your users during the migration process. And once you have this in place, you can really, the opportunities are really endless. You can communicate announcements, alerts, ads, links, all within a matter of minutes. And this is very useful during the migration process and can really allow site administrators to broadcast information, redirect users to the new portal, or collect information on how the user experience was. So I'm going to go very quickly now back into our adoption section. So this is our last phase of the migration process. And we're going to use this usage overview report to understand this a little bit better. So during the migration process, we can generate these usage trends reports to go and see, how is the usage trend of Farm A or SharePoint 2013 versus Farm B, maybe that's SharePoint Online. How are they comparing? And it's really possible to drill down within these reports to monitor activity at a more granular level. And you can really easily compare trends for a site that you've migrated. For example, the HR site, and see if the users from the HR department are still using the old version or have successfully migrated to the new version. So how you can do that, I'm going to make this a bit bigger for you guys. So here you can actually see your portal tree structure here. So you can actually drill down if you want to see metrics. You can see your adoption metrics, your search metrics, and your content metrics only for SharePoint 2013. And you can see all the information will update according to that. And you can actually drill down within SharePoint 2013, and you can really understand, how are your community sites, and all the different documents and aspects like that in the portal. You can also, so for our purposes, let's say we're migrating to SharePoint Online. We'll drill down into SharePoint Online, and then you can drill down once again into your various documents. For our purposes, you would be able to see here, you could drill down all the way into your sites, your documents, all the way to the very granular level. So that's a really nice feature. And again, talking about adoption, the biggest challenge in any migration is really making sure that people are really utilizing the new portal. So here we have our usage overview report that you can select from our portal tree, so SharePoint Online. And we have some content metrics similar to what I showed you previously in our portal resources report. And next to that, we have these adoption metrics. And again, for our purposes today, this is just a general overview report. We do have much more advanced adoption reports that we would be happy to show you in a demo. But we can drill down into much more into a little. So here we have our adoption unique users and groups and attributes. And here you can actually see the departments within, so your 80 user groups. And you can actually hover over them, as I'm doing here, and see the number of visits per user, which we can see here is around 7. And you can see which departments have a higher rate of visits per user, and here you can see the departments that have like a little bit of a lower rate. These are more of the laggers. So here, this is really where you can take action and give these laggers more training, help these groups that are less active in SharePoint or maybe less active in the new portal, help them really adapt to the new environment. So that's a great way to use this information to understand, to allocate those resources. Maybe we don't want to allocate training to every single group because it's very expensive, but here we know, which groups specifically are not adapting to the portal. We can also drill down into these groups. So for example, let's scroll down into the marketing group. You can actually see the users within the specific groups. Again, apply the same method. Some of these users may not need training at all, whereas some of these at the bottom. So that's a great way to allocate those resources as well.
It's definitely important when looking at this adoption. I mean, you look at these numbers, and I kind of talked about this before, but having these be able to tie back into your plan, right? So understanding these adoption numbers that you're going to be looking for, understanding these overviews before you migrate, while you migrate, and after you migrate can really lead you into a path of giving the right information at the right time to the right people. So whether you're using the analytics from the usage side of it, you can see who is doing what. I love the engagement side of it. I think that's a very missed point in a lot of migrations, is helping people gather the right information and target this information for the right people to know who's doing what. So if you're in the middle of a migration, letting people know, did we miss something? Is there something else that you're looking for? Letting them know that if you're doing the before, you can let them know, hey, your site's being moved in a certain time, or this is happening. Do you want to be involved? A lot of this engagement is really, really, really powerful to get that business involved and let them know kind of what's happening. So in our story of talking from on-premises up to Office 365, this kind of gives you the full picture of how you should be moving stuff, or I should say the options that you have to move stuff, and then the tools and the KPIs that you can kind of bring together to get the right information for your leadership to figure out what you're going to be doing, right? So ROI is important. You need to understand it. You need to plan it. And there are analysis tools available like this that can guide you into the right path to make sure your migration is successful, because that was the goal of this conversation, is how to get a successful migration, and it involves a lot of stuff. It's definitely not just to pick up and move. Look at the migrations, look at the past, and look at the things in the middle to get you up there, or to get you to your new environments.
Thanks, Drew. Okay, so just the last section that I'll cover here. So this is search. So search, huge topic when talking about migration. We're talking about adoption of SharePoint in general. It's really important. I think it's one of the most important things to measure in the portal, really at any phase of the migration process, but particularly after the migration. It can really give you those important insights on what people need from the portal and where they may be facing challenges. And if we find out, for example, that everyone is searching for the same content, again, let's put a link on the homepage, save everyone those 30 seconds each day they're searching for that same popular content. So here we can actually see our top search phrases and also our successful versus failed search phrases. And we can actually click on each term, and again, we can see that everything is dynamic. So for example, we can see which users were actually searching for that specific term of insurance. So the information is dynamic. We can see which department is searching.
So I'm definitely with the search, you're going to be able to get everything that you kind of need going forward. And very, very powerful stuff here, Marley. Very awesome.
Thanks, guys. If anyone has any questions, we can take some at this time. We'll go ahead and switch back to our presentation.
If you guys have any questions for concurrency, some of the stuff that we do, I kind of already talked about it, but we do everything, and basically anything that SharePoint can do. So we kind of cover all of that going forward. So if you want to follow up with any of that, feel free to reach out to me or hit up our website, and we can talk about what we can do and how, and also how Cardiolog can kind of help your business move towards a migration.
Thanks, Drew. And if anyone is interested, we have a free trial of Cardiolog Analytics SaaS, which is what I showed you today. It's a 14-day trial. We also have a trial for our on-prem version as well. And we'd be happy to set up a personal demo for anyone who's interested. And you can also reach out to us for our emails, anything like that. You have Drew and my email here. So yeah, if you'd like to submit any questions, we're still taking questions towards the end. I do see a question from Prasanth. Will we be sharing the presentation after the webinar? So yes, we will be sharing the recording. And yeah, I think Drew, we can definitely share this presentation online as well. Shouldn't be a problem.
Absolutely, yeah. I would say feel free to reach out to Marley or myself. We can give you the presentation directly. As you say, the webinar will be posted online. I can put these up on one of our slide shares too, that we can share them. So
sure.
you will be getting an email from all of this stuff. But yes, feel free to reach out directly or find a way to get a hold of us, and you will get the slides. Yes, if you need them. No issues there.
Sure.
Great question.
I do see a question from John asking specifically, are there any dashboards specific for administrators as well as business users within these predefined dashboards that are available in Cardiolog SaaS? So there are a number of pre-made dashboards available for admins. Specifically, what I showed, again, these portal resources reports, these are great for supporting a migration. Improving search optimization in the search schema, that's another great dashboard. As well as we have some technological compatibility dashboards, including mobile and browser versions. And if you're a business user, we have some reports. Again, these more in-depth SharePoint adoption reports. We have visitor engagement reports, as well as collaboration. And we'd be happy, in a demonstration, we can really focus more of our time on these specific dashboards to show you how we can tailor this information to your organization.
Another really good question.
Okay. I think we'll take one last question. So I have a question from Jeff for you, Drew, asking about the various migration options. What have you seen are kind of the most common scenarios for migration? What's kind of the trend right now?
Yeah, so a good question. So the trend I've been seeing has really been mainly figuring out how to get up to at least 2013 to 2016 and getting into the cloud. So a lot of hybrid is kind of the shift that I've been seeing. A lot of it is dependent, though, on your current environment. So definitely as the larger scale companies that I've been working with, a hybrid environment has been the -- thing I've been seeing, and bringing certain workloads up into Office 365. So the main ones I've seen have been like extranet sharing and OneDrive. So whatever you're doing for like partner or vendor management for people accessing your stuff externally, Office 365 can provide you a much better platform for that. So migrating, whether it's projects or whether it's extranet-specific information, moving that up into Office 365 first, and then that's like your iterative approach and doing some updates in your process there for it. So definitely the shift I've seen heavily has been getting people off of 2007 and 2010. Whether they're going to 2016 or Office 365, I'd say it's pretty mixed, but definitely leaning towards cloud plus hybrid as the #1 option out there today. And it's definitely something I think people need to look at. I think that the question isn't really to cloud or not to cloud, it is what to cloud. And that is the answer that you kind of need to look for and figure out how that fits in your migration plan.
Great. Definitely an interesting
We almost
question.
made it on time.
Yeah. All right, guys. So I think we're going to cut the presentation off at this time. Again, if anyone has any additional questions, you can email us. We'll be happy to answer any questions at any time about SharePoint migration, about analytics, anything of that nature. So thanks for joining. Thanks, Drew. And definitely hope to see you next time. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone, for joining.